Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name is Michael Shaulov. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fireblocks. For those who are not familiar with Fireblocks, we are the leading wallet and treasury management platform in the space. We service a lot of the corporates, institutions, businesses, and basically any B2B that is working with digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So what we're going to talk about today is a couple of things. First of all, what we are going to review is some of the challenges that we've seen, specifically for brands and corporates, to going into the Web3 space and essentially building business models and innovation on top of the blockchain. And we're going to review those challenges and suggest a few blueprints of how this can be solved and how we can help them. And we are also going to discuss the launch of our new product, which is the Fireblocks non-custodial wallet as a service SDK that solves some of those issues. So I guess for most of you that hopefully read the news or were tracking the news in this space over the last 12 months, you probably noticed that there were a lot of announcements of brands and corporates that were announcing initiatives of building in the Web3 space and creating different projects. So one of the recent surveys shows that 52% of the Fortune 100, they have some kind of initiative in the Web3 space. Now, a lot of you guys are probably here asking yourself, if that's the case, why, if you're in the space, you only know that about maybe a dozen actually went live with something that is a meaningful, major, and repeatable experience that they took to scale, right? And even that dozen is actually a fraction of something like 700 projects that currently running on OpenSea alone and about 80 million NFTs that are listed over there, right? So what is actually the thing that prevents a lot of those brands and corporates from taking those projects from innovation labs, innovation teams, and taking them into a mass production? We've been working with quite a few of them over the last 12 months, over the last year. And one of the things that we are actually seeing over there is something that is quite similar to what we were seeing with some of the banks and the fintechs maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And the main thing that basically prevents them for taking it live and taking it to production is really risk, right? So risk is usually the case that a lot of those corporates, they have their internal teams that are responsible for looking into different risks and making sure that they are not going to put the entire organization because of a certain initiative. So when we look at the specific risks that we think that are the most acute and discussed and where there is most of the confusion when things try to go from a lab into production, they all sort of boil down into this brand and reputational risk, which those organizations, rightfully so, scare the most about. And they break down into two main topics, right? The first one is really the regulatory risk. And the regulatory risk has usually two components that we hear about. The first one is really around how on-balance sheet crypto should be accounted, right? So for example, if you have ETH that you need to pay for transactions or you're holding assets for your clients, how do you account for it? And there is a lot of confusion in terms of how accountants need to treat that. And there is even more confusion with some of the announcements or basically guidelines that came from the SEC around SEB 121 related to public companies. So that's sort of like, one issue over there. The second issue is really what kind of licenses or lack of licenses, or do you need licenses at all to operate in this space, and how you can basically operate without those licenses that usually brands and corporates don't have. So that's kind of one big chunk of risks that they need to mitigate. And the second one is something that most people kind of seen and operated with in this space is really around security and compliance, right? So how do you make sure that users don't lose their funds, they don't lose the keys to their wallets if you're providing or helping them to interact with your offering? And how do you making sure that your offering or your users are not interacting with sanctioned entities, right? So overall, this is what we were seeing. And we think that there are a few elements that are required as a blueprint to basically help this to go into a full production, right? So the first one is really to be able to help those organizations to deploy using flexible custody options that really fit into the into the regulatory posture that they want to have, which is usually that they don't want to be in the game of a regulated entity. Coupled with that is the fact that we need to have a solution for those on-balance sheet assets like ETH and so on through gasless transaction or cryptoless solutions for interacting with blockchain. And then we need a framework of how to incorporate KYC and KYT into a lot of those interactions in terms of making sure that there is no activity that eventually interacting with sanctioned entities, right? So all of it basically falls into some guidelines that help them to navigate the regulatory uncertainty, right, to the point where they think that their posture is reasonably good, right? Then the second element that we really need to solve is around security or cybersecurity, right, to basically make sure that they have a proven and reliable technology to rely on. We'll cover that more in details in a few seconds. And last but not least, there is a huge, say, education gap, right, that exists. So there's not enough white papers. We need more experts to be helping there. We need consultants and partners, and we need the whole partner ecosystem, which is evolving, to help them to navigate the space and take those projects live. Now, specifically as it comes for some of the first points, right, of how do you create this kind of approach where users that can come in and interact with your offering, we need to remember that brands and corporates, they're actually going after a market that is much bigger than the crypto native crowd, right? So the crypto native crowd is a subset of the market that they are interested in going after. And when I say crypto native crowd, it's basically someone who has a MetaMask and knows how to use a wallet, already has a wallet. They understand what are the risks in the space. Most of their addressable market is actually people that never interacted with crypto or Web3 before. And therefore, it's even more complicated, and it basically brings a lot of those issues into somewhat of a conflicting setup, right? So for example, if you want to offer users a secure onboarding experience where those users don't have a wallet, right? How are you able to do it without putting yourself at the seat of a licensed institution, right? How do you put yourself in a situation where you don't need to have a license to act as a custodian? And then the second issue is that really most of those experiences require the user to interact with different smart contracts and decentralized applications to really unlock the value of doing something in Web3. And we all know that this is an area which is still somewhat unsolved, because if you're providing a completely ungated experience, the chances that someone will step into a rug pull or something like that is pretty high, right? Even crypto native folks are usually, become victim to those issues. So as we were thinking about how to solve specifically this subset of problems, right, we were thinking about a blueprint of creating a really secure offering that helps institutions to go about it. And the first thing is really to use MPC technology to provide a non-custodial setup where simultaneously both the user is the owner, right? So it's really non-custodial in nature, where the user has the sufficient amount of key material to really control the interaction, and the brand or the institution are actually not in the middle of the transaction. But at the same time, you're actually able to provide enterprise-grade security and transaction screening to make sure that they are not falling victim into some kind of hack, they are not interacting with a sanctioned entity. And you can also provide different experiences to basically recover the user in the case that they lost their keys basically they lost the access to their wallet, they lost the access to the app, they lost the access to the web application, and so on. So over the last year, Fireblocks, we interacted with a lot of brands and a lot of clients. Just to give you some idea, we built our platform when we started about 5 years ago to provide probably the most scalable and robust wallet as a service offering in this space, which is currently being delivered or was delivered as primarily as what we call a direct custody mode. And our clients were able to issue over $4 trillion of transactions through the this infrastructure. So a pretty large volume of digital assets were moved over our wallets. And we're currently servicing about 130 million wallets that are being provisioned by our customers to those users, about 1,800 customers that really span across banking, fintech, and Web3 startups and brands. So it's a pretty scalable subset where we were able to learn of how to do it. And what we are really announcing today is sort of extension of our wallet as a service platform with a non-custodial wallet SDK. The non-custodial wallet SDK, it's basically a capability that enables anyone who builds an application for Web3 to embed a wallet in a secure way into an iOS, Android, web, and even server-based experiences, making sure that the owner of the asset is the end user, but simultaneously being able to provide the security. So let's dig in. The first thing that I do want to mention is that this offering is built on the Fireblocks battle-tested infrastructure that was built to scale. So as an example, we do have already brands that were able to go live with very scalable offerings using our wallet as a service offering. For example, Flipkart, for those who are not familiar, they're one of the biggest e-commerce platforms globally. They created about 2.4 million wallets for their users. And out of that, about 1 million of those that were created in the last month alone. Now, at the core of the offering, really what we're solving for is the ability for those brands or for the corporates or for any Web3 startup to actually be able to cross through some of those gates that require to basically take you to production. So the first thing is really a battle-tested infrastructure with the certifications that you need. So our wallet as a service infrastructure really built on top of the certifications that we were able to achieve over the last 4 years since we went live, where we are the only one that have SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, 17, and 18. And the infrastructure is the only one that, and the first one from all the wallet as a service offerings that achieved the CCSS Level 3 certification, which is a specialized standard to certify cryptocurrency wallet infrastructure. Now, this actually certification is really important because most cybersecurity teams, especially internal teams, when they look on a technology that is provided by third parties, they would conduct what is called a third-party risk assessment, and the certification really provide them a pretty good, peace of mind. But on top of that, there is actually a significant depth around the technology and IP, right? So we really believe in the ability to provide multi-layer security, or what we call defense in depth, which first and foremost is powered by our MPC CMP algorithm. This is an algorithm that our cryptography team brought to market about 3 years ago, and it's currently the leading algorithm. It's open source. The algorithm itself is peer review, and we continue to invest in making it more and more resilient. Now, that's basically the first line of defense that removes the single point of failure around the private key. So there is no point in time where the private key will come together on any endpoint where the hackers are able to intercept it. But that's only the first line of defense. The second line of defense is that it's backed by hardware, and even if the MPC has a certain issue or flow, there is a hardware-backed security that is protecting that. And on top of it, we're giving the brands, the enterprises, and our institutional clients the ability to configure policies and to make sure that they're able to put the user, even though they're using self-custody, they're able to provide guardrails that they will only interact with the right DeFi applications, with the right DApps, and they are not subject to any malicious activity that can be targeted at them. And on top of that, we also provide the ability to integrate with some of the leading KYT tools, such as chain analysis and Elliptic, that provide the guardrails in terms of compliance. Now, in addition to that, we also built in a large set of building blocks that allows you to create a seamless experience around key recovery and key backup and recovery, which means if the user actually lost their key and lost the access to their endpoint, we are able to rotate the keys and basically give them the access back to their wallet. And it can be done in multiple different ways, basically based on the user experience that is required. On top of that, the application is really designed as an SDK for developers, right? So first of all, you can instrument that into any type of application, whether it's mobile or web. And we also reduce some of the friction as it relates to interacting with the blockchain. So our infrastructure comes with integration to over 40 different blockchains, right, that we run the node. So you don't need to basically contract additional indexers, and it really simplifies the development. At launch, we are basically supporting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and 15 other EVMs. And over the next couple of months, we will add all the other blockchains, about 45 different blockchains, including Solana, Stellar, Ripple, and so on. And on top of all that, what we're really trying to solve for is the ability for the key to be at the hands of the end user, right? So the way that MPC works in this specific case is that only the user in his mobile device or in his web browser, he has a sufficient key material to initiate transactions. And then there is another key share where the company is actually not in the middle. That key share in most configuration is actually being held by us. And that key share will be able to prevent the user, based on the configuration that is put by the company, to fall subject to any malicious activity or any cyber hack or so on, or interact with different pools or malicious actors, or with sanctioned entities based on the compliance and KYT policies that were put in place. Now, on top of that, in order to make sure that it's regulated properly in the form of a non-custodial, our MPC solution also allows the user to extract the key, right, to basically export the key and move those keys into a different wallet, making sure that there isn't a lock-in of the user into this specific service. And that really guarantees that it's a really non-custodial solution. We put some effort, which is just a general effort for the industry, to create guidelines, or an overview, actually, of all the different custodial and non-custodial setup in terms of how you configure wallets in MPC or multisig or account abstraction or whatever it is, which we posted on our website. And based on how the setup is, you're able to understand what are the regulatory obligations and what you should be concerned or what you should review with the different providers or with your setup. Again, this is not you need to seek independent legal advice when you build your application, but it's a good starting point to understand what kind of setups you can consider. And we believe that it's actually quite helpful for to bootstrap a lot and get a lot of the education in the market for people who are not intimately familiar with those different setups. So now, last but not least, about a year ago, actually, in the previous Permissionless, we launched our Web3 engine, which gives a much broader set of tools for brands, Web3 startups, and corporates, and anyone else who is interacting in the space. It allows people to do a lot of other stuff that are not only siloed within the specific concept of provisioning wallets for end users. So for example, the ability to manage and control smart contracts that you deploy on-chain and interact with those smart contracts in an enterprise environment where you need to have multiple developers or multiple servers to be able to interact with them. You can build, we have a lot of customers that are building fiat on and off ramps using that solution. And last but not least, maybe like the most important aspect is the ability to run secure treasury operations for Web3, right? So the ability to store and interact with NFTs for your corporate objectives, DeFi, secure interaction with DeFi in an institutional environment, and clearly cryptocurrency trading. So to wrap it up, we are, in the last 5 years, we've been really excited about pushing the industry in using more secure tools, more scalable tools, and making sure that there is a solid infrastructure to bring more and more consumers and end users into this space. But the thing that we were most excited about working on in the last 12 months is really bringing solutions that remove counterparty risk in this industry, because we believe that the enhanced counterparty risk that was in this industry about 12 months ago, and we all know what happened over there, was something that slowed all of us down, right? So we're excited about these new products, which essentially both reduces counterparty risk and is able to help us bring the next set of brands, corporates that will bring more users into this space and unleash innovation in a very secure way. So we're excited to continuously working with all the people here in the audience and build, help you guys build the innovative projects that you guys are bringing to the market. You should come and visit us in our booth. It's 1113. Over there, we have a large group of people that will be able to walk you through everything we're doing, and we'll be able to discuss your roadmap and how we can help you guys. And we're also going to be doing a webinar on September 27th, if you guys want to join, which we're going to discuss some of those solutions more in depth. And if you're interested to learn about the new offering, it's fireblocks.com/NCW. Thank you so much, and I'm excited to continue working with you guys.